The sand was warm under my feet that morning. I remember that detail, specifically the way it felt almost too hot. Like the earth itself was trying to tell me something, trying to warn me to turn around and walk the other way. I kept walking toward the blue-striped umbrella, where my wife sat with our friends, where the day would fracture into a before and after I'd spend months trying to understand. The beach was crowded that Saturday. Families and couples sprawled across every available stretch of shore. Sarah had been excited about this trip for weeks, a long weekend in Cape May with our college friends, the first real vacation we'd taken in over a year. I'd arranged everything: the hotel suite with the ocean view, dinner reservations at her favorite seafood restaurant, even surprised her with a couple's massage appointment. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted us to be perfect again. I should have known better. Marcus was already there when I arrived with the cooler full of drinks. Of course he was. Marcus, with his personal trainer physique and his tech startup success story and his perfectly white teeth that he flashed like a weapon. He'd been part of our college group, dated my wife's best friend Amy for a few years before they broke up, and somehow remained permanently embedded in our social circle like a splinter you can never quite extract. "Took you long enough," Sarah called out, not looking up from her phone. She was wearing the new bikini she'd bought specifically for this trip. Turquoise. Expensive. The kind that required a certain confidence to pull off. She had that confidence. She'd always had it. "Traffic getting out of the parking lot," I said, setting the cooler down in the shade. "Everyone and their mother decided to come to the beach today. It's summer, babe. What did you expect?" She finally looked up, her sunglasses so dark I couldn't see her eyes. "Can you set up my chair? I want to get some sun before it gets too hot." I spent the next 20 minutes arranging chairs, umbrellas, towels, playing the role of unpaid cabana boy, while everyone else cracked open beers and settled into vacation mode. Amy and her new boyfriend Derek were there, along with James and Christina, another couple from our college days. Marcus had come alone, apparently between relationships, a fact that Sarah had mentioned at least 3 times during the drive down. "Poor Marcus," she'd said, scrolling through Instagram in the passenger seat. "He seems so lonely lately. Did you see his post about his dog dying? So sad." I hadn't seen it. I didn't follow Marcus on social media. We weren't friends in any meaningful sense, just 2 men forced into proximity by the architecture of old friendships and the social contracts that come with marriage. "He'll be fine," I'd said, keeping my eyes on the road. Marcus always lands on his feet. Sarah had made a small sound, not quite agreement, not quite disagreement. Just a sound that hung in the air between us, like humidity. Now, watching her settle into her beach chair, adjusting her straps and stretching her legs out in a way that seemed almost performative, I felt something I'd been trying to ignore for months. The sense that I was watching my wife perform a version of herself that had nothing to do with me. "Dave, you want a beer?" James held up a Corona. 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 Lime already wedged in the neck. "Yeah, thanks." The morning passed in that lazy, formless way that beach days do. I tried to relax, tried to sink into the vacation mindset, but there was a tension in my shoulders that wouldn't release. Part of it was work stress I'd left in the middle of a major project, and my phone kept buzzing with emails I was trying to ignore. But most of it, if I'm being honest with myself, was the feeling that I was watching something unfold that I couldn't quite name. Sarah barely spoke to me all morning. When I asked if she wanted another drink, she waved me off. When I suggested we go for a walk along the water, she said she was too comfortable to move. When I mentioned the massage appointment I'd booked for later, she said she'd probably cancel. She didn't want to waste beach time inside some spa. "I spent good money on that," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Then you go," she replied, turning a page in the magazine she wasn't actually reading. "Get a massage. Relax. You're so tense lately." I'm so tense. The words sat in my stomach like stones. Around noon, Marcus suggested we play volleyball. There was a net set up about 50 yards down the beach, currently unused. Everyone seemed enthusiastic about the idea except me. "Come on, man," Marcus said, clapping me on the shoulder, with that familiar condescension wrapped in friendliness. "It'll be fun. Work off some of that beer." I'd had 1 beer. He'd had 4. "I'm good," I said. "Think I'll hold down the fort here." Sarah stood up, brushing sand off her legs. Something in her voice, eagerness, brightness, made me look up. She was smiling at Marcus in a way I recognized from old photographs, from early in our relationship when everything between us was still new and electric. They walked down to the volleyball net together, along with Amy, Derek, and Christina. James stayed back with me, settling into the chair Sarah had vacated. "You really not gonna play?" he asked. "Someone needs to watch our stuff." "Fair enough." He cracked open another beer, offered me one. I declined. "How are things with you guys? Seems like it's been a while since we all got together." Cracked. "In the concrete. Ghost part. Have a real bend of concrete. In the concrete frandre. And concrete for more Bennick. Do not final life pair. In the concrete for men." "Yeah, work's been crazy. Both of us just grinding, you know." James nodded. But there was something in his expression, not quite pity, but close to it. Like he could see something I couldn't, or wouldn't. We sat in silence for a while, watching the volleyball game. Watching Sarah laugh and dive for the ball. Watching Marcus set up spikes. Watching the easy physicality between them that looked like nothing and everything at once. "She seems happy," James said finally. I didn't respond. Because what could I say? That my wife seemed happiest when I wasn't around? That I'd noticed. Over the past months, how she lit up in group settings but dimmed the moment we were alone? That our marriage had become something I couldn't quite recognize anymore. Not broken, exactly, but not whole either. A fracture so fine you couldn't see it until the pressure came. The volleyball game lasted over an hour. By the time they came back, everyone was flushed and sweaty, riding that high that comes from physical exertion and laughter and sun. Sarah was practically glowing. "That was so fun," she said, reaching for her water bottle. "God, I forgot how good it feels to actually move." "You should come to the gym with me sometime," Marcus said, stretching his arms overhead in a way that displayed every muscle group. "I've got a great trainer." "Maybe I will." Sarah took a long drink of water, her eyes on him, over the rim of her bottle. I stood up. "I'm going to grab some lunch. Anyone want anything?" A chorus of no's. Everyone had packed sandwiches, apparently. Everyone except me. "I'll go with you," Sarah said suddenly. "I could use a walk." Hope flickered in my chest, stupid. Stubborn hope that maybe this was her way of reconnecting, of acknowledging that we'd barely spoken all morning. But as I started to gather my things, she turned to Marcus. "Actually, I'm kind of burnt. Could you put some sunscreen on my back before I go?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "Sure," Marcus said easily, already reaching for the sunscreen bottle. We all watched as Sarah turned around, sweeping her hair over one shoulder, presenting her back to him like an offering. Marcus squeezed sunscreen into his palm and began applying it to her shoulders, slow and methodical, his hands moving across her skin with a familiarity that made my throat close. "Make sure you get under the straps," Sarah said. "I'm already burning." No one else seemed to find this strange. Amy was checking her phone. Derek was building a small sandcastle. Christina and James were discussing dinner plans. It was just me, standing there with my wallet in my hand, watching my wife let another man touch her with an intimacy that should have been reserved for. "You coming?" Sarah asked, finally stepping away from Marcus, finally looking at me. "Or are you just going to stand there?" Her voice had an edge I recognized. The edge that appeared whenever I expressed an opinion she disagreed with, whenever I asked her not to do something, whenever I suggested that maybe, possibly, something she was doing made me uncomfortable. Yeah, I said. I'm coming. We walked toward the boardwalk in silence, the sand hot under our feet, the sun pressing down on us like judgment. Other couples passed us, holding hands, laughing, being together in ways that seemed natural and easy. We walked with 2 feet of space between us, a gap that might as well have been a canyon. You're being weird, Sarah said finally. I'm not being anything. You're doing that thing where you get all quiet and sulky. It's a vacation, Dave. Can you just relax? I stopped walking. I'm not sulking. Then what would you call it? I'd call it watching my wife ask another man to rub sunscreen all over her back. There it was. The thing I'd been trying not to say. Laid out between us like a body. Sarah turned to face me, her expression shifting from defensive to something harder. What was I supposed to do? Burn? You could have asked me. You were literally walking away. I was waiting for you to come with me, like you said you would. She laughed, a short, sharp sound without humor. Oh my God, Dave. This is insane. He's our friend. It was Sunscreen. Sunscreen. You're acting like... She stopped, shook her head. You know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not going to spend our vacation with you interrogating me about every little thing I do. I'm not interrogating you. That's exactly what you're doing. And honestly, it's exhausting. It's been exhausting for months, the way you look at me whenever I talk to another man. Like you're waiting for me to, I don't even know what. Cheat on you? Run away? What exactly do you think is going to happen? My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. I think you could be more considerate of how things look, how they make me feel. How things look? Jesus Christ, Dave. We're on a beach, with friends, in public. What exactly do you think is happening here? I think you're flirting with him. The words came out before I could stop them. The truth I'd been swallowing for hours, maybe longer. The thing I'd noticed at dinners and parties and game nights over the past few months, the way Sarah's attention always seemed to slide toward Marcus, the way she laughed at his jokes just a little too enthusiastically, the way she found excuses to sit next to him, to touch his arm, to create small moments of connection that individually meant nothing but collectively added up to something I couldn't ignore. Sarah's face went white, then red. I am not flirting. Each word carefully spaced, vibrating with anger. I asked him to put sunscreen on my back. If you're so jealous about everything, just go home. The sentence hit me like a slap. Not the words themselves, but the venom behind them. The permission they contained. The door they opened. Go home, she repeated. If this is how you're going to be, if you can't handle me having a normal, friendly interaction with someone without turning it into some dramatic thing, then just leave. Because I'm not going to walk on eggshells all weekend worrying about whether every single thing I do is going to set you off. I stared at her. At this woman I'd been married to for 6 years. Dated for 3. Before that, 9 years of my life, and I'd never seen this look on her face. This combination of contempt and dismissal, like I was an annoying child throwing a tantrum, like my feelings were not just invalid but offensive to her. You don't mean that, I said. Don't I? She crossed her arms. You know what, Dave? Maybe I do. Maybe I need a break from this, from you constantly monitoring me, from feeling like I'm under surveillance every time we're around other people. Maybe we both need some space to think about what we actually want. The boardwalk was crowded with people buying ice cream and beach toys, families and couples navigating their own dramas, all of us pretending that everything was fine while small earthquakes happened in our chests. So that's it? I said. You're telling me to leave? On our vacation? I'm saying I need you to stop making everything into a problem. And if you can't do that, then yes, maybe it's better if you go. I waited for her to take it back, to see the hurt on my face and soften, to reach for my hand and tell me she didn't mean it, that we could figure this out, that we were just stressed and the sun was making everything feel bigger than it was. She didn't take it back. Fine, I said. I'll get my own lunch. I turned and walked away, aware of her standing there behind me, aware that she wasn't calling me back. I bought a sandwich I didn't eat and sat on a bench facing the ocean, watching people play in the waves, watching the world continue despite the fact that mine was quietly imploding. After an hour, I walked back to our spot on the beach. Marcus was applying more sunscreen to Sarah's back. They were laughing about something, some story he was telling, his hands moving across her shoulders while she tilted her head and smiled, that smile I used to think was reserved for me. The rest of the group was there too. Everyone in high spirits, day drunk and sun-dazed. The energy of vacation making everything feel consequence-free. I stood at the edge of our little encampment, watching. Sarah saw me. I know she saw me, because her eyes passed right over me and then away, continuing her conversation with Marcus, as if I'd never appeared at all. "Hey Dave," James called out. "We're thinking of heading to that tiki bar for drinks. You in?" "Yeah, sure," I heard myself say. But I wasn't in. I wasn't anywhere. I was a ghost at my own vacation, watching my wife exist in a world where I was optional at best, invisible at worst. The afternoon dissolved into a blur of umbrella drinks and forced smiles. We moved from the beach to the bar, a loud, crowded place with a reggae band and sand tracked in on everyone's feet. Sarah positioned herself next to Marcus at every opportunity at the bar, at the high-top table where we gathered, in the group photos someone insisted on taking. When I tried to stand next to her, she shifted away, creating space between us that Marcus immediately filled. The message was clear. I was being punished for my earlier jealousy. This was my lesson. Watch what happens when you complain, when you express discomfort, when you ask for basic consideration. This is what you get. I nursed a beer and said almost nothing. Every time someone addressed me, I responded with the minimum required words. Amy asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. Christina asked if the sun had gotten to me. I said maybe. Derek, who I'd always liked for his straightforwardness, pulled me aside at one point and said, "Hey man, you seem off. Everything cool?" "Everything's great," I said, the words tasting like ash. He looked like he wanted to push further, but I didn't give him the chance. I went to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror, looking at a face I barely recognized. When had I become this person? This man who stood silently by while his marriage dissolved in public? This man who accepted dismissal and humiliation because making waves seemed worse than drowning quietly? When I came back out, Sarah was on Marcus's shoulders in the pool, part of some chicken fight game everyone had organized. She was shrieking with laughter, her hands on his head for balance, their bodies slick with chlorinated water and tequila courage. I watched her lean down to say something in his ear. I watched him laugh and adjust his grip on her thighs. No one seemed to notice how wrong this was. Or maybe they did, and they just didn't care. Maybe they'd all agreed, silently, that I was overreacting, that I was the problem, that Sarah deserved to have fun and I was the wet blanket trying to suffocate her joy. I pulled out my phone. It took 15 minutes to find a flight back home that night. Red-eye from Atlantic City. One connection through Charlotte. Arriving in Denver by morning. Expensive, the kind of last-minute booking that would show up on our credit card statement as an accusation. But I didn't care anymore. I booked it. Then I opened my Uber app and scheduled a pickup from the hotel for 11 p.m. The sun was setting by the time we all headed back, painting the sky in oranges and purples that people kept taking pictures of, as if beauty could be captured and kept, as if anything could be kept. Sarah walked ahead of me with Marcus, their shoulders touching, their conversation private and animated. I walked with Derek and Christina, letting them fill the silence with chatter about their jobs, their apartment hunting, their lives that still made sense. At the hotel, everyone agreed to meet for dinner in an hour. Showers and fresh clothes, and then seafood at the place I'd made reservations at a month ago. I listened to the plans being made and said nothing about my own. In our room, Sarah went straight to the shower without looking at me. I heard the water running, heard her humming something I didn't recognize, and felt something inside me finally settle into place. Not peace, exactly, More like resignation. Or maybe clarity. I opened my suitcase. I packed methodically, quietly, every item folded and stored with care. My clothes, my toiletries, the book I'd brought but hadn't read. I left Sarah's things untouched. I left the clothes I'd worn that day in a pile by my suitcase, sandy, salt-stained, marked by the day I'd finally had enough. The shower turned off. I heard Sarah moving around in the bathroom, the blow-dryer starting up. I kept packing. When she emerged, wrapped in a towel, her hair damp and curling around her face, she glanced at my suitcase and frowned. "What are you doing?" "Packing." "I can see that." "Why?" I didn't answer. I just kept folding, kept organizing, kept preparing for a departure she clearly thought I wasn't capable of making. "Dave." Her voice had an edge now. "What are you doing?" "You told me to go home," I said, my voice even. "So, I'm going home." "That's not—" "I didn't mean—" She stopped, her mouth open, scrambling for words. "I was upset. You were being ridiculous. I didn't actually mean for you to leave, but you did mean it. You said it. You meant it enough to say it out loud. In public. Where everyone could hear. You told me that if I had a problem with you flirting with Marcus, I should just go home. I wasn't flirting, so I'm going home." I zipped my suitcase closed. The sound was definitive. Final. "You're being insane," Sarah said, her voice rising. "We have dinner reservations in 40 minutes. Everyone's waiting for us. You can't just what? Throw a tantrum and leave in the middle of our vacation?" "I'm not throwing a tantrum. I'm not angry. I'm not yelling. I'm just leaving." "Over what? Over sunscreen? Over me having fun with our friends?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is so typical of you. The moment things don't go exactly the way you want, you shut down. You sulk. You punish everyone else for not reading your mind." I looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman I'd proposed to on a beach in Mexico, promising forever. At the woman who'd walk down an aisle toward me, while I cried with happiness. At the woman I'd built a life with, a home with, a future with, and I realized I didn't know her anymore. Or maybe I'd never known her at all. Maybe I'd been in love with a version of her that only existed in my imagination. And the real Sarah, this woman standing in front of me in a hotel towel, defending her right to humiliate me in public, was a stranger I'd somehow married. "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm just done." "Done with what?" "Done being treated like I don't matter. Done being dismissed and mocked and told my feelings are invalid. Done watching you perform for another man while pretending I'm the crazy one for noticing." Her face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, something that might have been guilt but passed too quickly to be sure. "If you leave tonight," she said finally, her voice low and dangerous, "we're done. You understand that? If you walk out that door, you're choosing to end this marriage over something completely stupid." I picked up my suitcase. "I'm not ending it," I said. "You ended it on the beach this afternoon, when you told me to go home. I'm just following your instructions. Dave, have a nice dinner. Enjoy the rest of your vacation." I walked to the door. My hand was on the handle when she spoke again. "You're really going to do this? You're really going to leave me here alone?" I turned back one last time. She was still standing in the middle of the room, wrapped in white hotel cotton, her hair dripping onto the carpet, her face finally showing something that looked like fear. "You won't be alone," I said. "Marcus is right down the hall." I closed the door behind me. The hallway was empty and quiet, the thick carpet absorbing every sound. I walked past Marcus's room, room 314. I'd noticed earlier when we'd all agreed to meet in the lobby. I walked past James and Christina's room, past Amy and Derek's. I walked past all the spaces where our friends were getting ready for dinner, preparing for a normal evening that would become something else entirely once they realized I was gone. The elevator descended in silence. The lobby was busy with new arrivals and departures. Everyone focused on their own dramas and destinations. I checked out at the desk, returned my room keys, declined the offer of a late checkout for tomorrow. Just the one key? The receptionist asked. Confused. Just the one, I confirmed. My Uber was waiting. The driver, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, helped me load my suitcase and asked if I'd had a good vacation. Not really, I said. She didn't push. We drove through the night streets of Cape May in silence, past restaurants and bars full of people having the summer evening I was supposed to be having. Through the window, I watched it all disappear behind me. The fairy lights strung between buildings, the couples walking hand in hand. The life I'd thought was mine. At the airport, I checked my bag and went through security. I had 3 hours until my flight. I found a bar, ordered a whiskey, and finally looked at my phone. 12 messages from Sarah. I didn't read any of them. I silenced my phone and put it face down on the bar. The bartender, a young guy with sleeve tattoos, refilled my glass without being asked. Bad day, he said. Bad marriage, I replied. He nodded like he understood, like this was something he'd seen before or lived through himself. At least you figured it out. Had I? Was this me figuring it out? Or was this me giving up? Was there a difference? I didn't know. All I knew was that I was sitting in an airport bar at 10 p.m., drinking whiskey and waiting for a flight that would take me away from the woman I'd promised to love forever, and the only thing I felt was relief. That scared me more than anything else. The flight was delayed by an hour. Equipment malfunctioned, they said. I sat at the gate and watched people, families with small children already asleep in strollers, business travelers typing urgently on laptops, college students with oversized backpacks treating the delay like an adventure. My phone buzzed constantly. I turned it off completely. When we finally boarded, I found my window seat and closed my eyes. The man next to me, mid-60s, wedding ring, carrying a hardcover John le Carré novel, gave me a polite nod and then left me alone. I was grateful for that. I couldn't have managed small talk, couldn't have pretended to be a person having a normal day. The plane took off, and I watched Cape May disappear below me, its lights fading into the dark Atlantic coast. Somewhere down there, Sarah was at dinner. Somewhere down there, she was explaining my absence to our friends. Or maybe she wasn't explaining anything. Maybe she was laughing, relieved, grateful to have an evening free from my jealousy and my sulking. Maybe Marcus was sitting in my chair. The thought should have enraged me, but I felt nothing. Just empty. Like I'd used up all my emotions in the hours of silent endurance. And now, there was nothing left but a kind of hollow clarity. I tried to sleep but couldn't. My mind kept replaying the day, not just the beach scene, but everything leading up to it. The past few months of growing distance, of Sarah's increasing irritation with everything I did or said, of feeling like I was constantly disappointing her simply by existing. When had it started? I couldn't pinpoint a moment. It had been gradual, like water wearing away stone. Small comments here and there about my job, my hobbies, my friends, my body. Little corrections about how I loaded the dishwasher or folded laundry or spoke to waiters. Suggestions that maybe I should dress better, work out more, be more ambitious, be more social, be more something other than what I was. I tried to be better. God knows I tried. I joined the gym Sarah liked. I'd gone to the networking events she insisted would help my career. I'd worn the clothes she picked out, cooked the meals she wanted, watched the shows she chose. I'd molded myself into whatever shape she needed, hoping it would be enough, hoping she'd look at me the way she used to. But it was never enough. The bar kept moving. The requirements kept changing. The old man next to me shifted, and his book fell into my lap, an accident, but it brought me back to the present moment. I handed it back to him. Sorry, he said. These seats keep getting smaller. No problem. He settled back into his reading. And I watched him for a moment, this stranger who seemed completely comfortable with himself. who didn't seem to be fleeing anything or running toward anything, just existing peacefully in transit. Can I ask you something? The words were out before I could stop them. He looked up, surprised but not unfriendly. Sure. How long have you been married? I gestured to his ring. 42 years. That's a long time. How did you make it work? He considered the question seriously, folding his book closed. You want the honest answer or the polite answer? Honest. The honest answer is that it's not the same marriage. We've been married 3 times to each other, I mean. The first marriage was young and stupid and passionate. The second was practical kids, careers, mortgage. The third, the one we're in now, that's the one where we finally figured out who we actually are instead of who we thought we should be. How do you get to the third marriage without destroying everything? He smiled not unkindly, but with the weariness of someone who'd lived through storms. Sometimes you have to destroy everything. The real question is whether you're destroying it to rebuild or destroying it to escape. Only you know which one you're doing. And if I don't know, then you're not ready to rebuild yet. And that's okay too. He went back to his book. The conversation clearly over, leaving me with more questions than answers. Was I destroying or escaping? Was there a difference? And why did both options feel equally terrifying? We landed in Charlotte at 2 a.m. I had a 3-hour layover before my connection to Denver. The airport was nearly empty. Just the overnight cruise and the exhausted travelers caught between time zones. I found a chair near my next gate and finally, reluctantly, turned my phone back on. 47 messages, 23 from Sarah, 12 from various friends asking where I was, if I was okay. 8 from numbers I didn't recognize, probably people Sarah had convinced to reach out on her behalf. 4 from my mother, who somehow already knew something was wrong. I read my mother's messages first. Sarah called. She's worried about you. Please let me know you're safe. Whatever is happening, you can talk to me. I love you. Please call when you can. I texted back. I'm safe. I'm fine. I just need some time. I'll call you tomorrow. I don't fly. I'll call you tomorrow. Then I opened Sarah's messages. I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help myself. The first few were confused. Where did you go? Are you seriously doing this right now? Dave, this is ridiculous. Come back. Then angry. You're being a child. Everyone is asking about you and I don't know what to tell them. You've completely ruined our vacation. I can't believe you're doing this over something so stupid. Then manipulative. I'm worried about you. Please just talk to me. This isn't like you. I'm sorry if I upset you. Can we please just talk about this like adults? And finally, after I hadn't responded to any of them, a shift. Fine. If this is how you want to handle things, I guess I know where we stand. Marcus offered to give me his room key since you abandoned me. I told him no, obviously. But at least someone here cares about my feelings. I hope you're happy with yourself. I stared at that last message for a long time. The attempted guilt trip. The way she'd managed to mention Marcus even in her attempts to reconcile. The implication that I should be grateful she'd turned down his room key, as if basic loyalty to your marriage was some kind of extraordinary sacrifice deserving praise. I didn't respond. I put my phone in airplane mode and closed my eyes. The sun was rising as we flew into Denver. The mountains emerged from the darkness like teeth, beautiful and jagged and unforgiving. I'd always loved this view, the moment when Colorado revealed itself, when home came into sight. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like another place I'd have to figure out how to exist in. My car was in long-term parking where I'd left it 3 days ago. 3 days. Was that all it had been? It felt like years had passed. Like I'd aged decades in the span of a single beach day. I drove through empty Sunday morning streets, past closed businesses and sleeping neighborhoods, back to the house Sarah and I had bought 2 years ago. The house we'd painted together, furnished together, argued about and compromised on, and ultimately agreed was perfect for us. I parked in the driveway and sat there for 10 minutes, unable to move. The house looked exactly the same as when I'd left it. Same blue door, same window boxes Sarah had insisted on, same mailbox I'd installed crooked and never fixed. But everything was different. I was different. Inside, the house was cool and silent. I dropped my suitcase by the door and walked through rooms that felt like museums of a life I'd once lived. Sarah's yoga mat in the corner. The stupid decorative pillows we'd argued about at HomeGoods. All the accumulated debris of a shared existence. I went upstairs to our bedroom and stood in the doorway. The bed was unmade. We'd left in a hurry Friday morning, both of us running late, both of us annoyed with each other about something I couldn't even remember now. Sarah's clothes were scattered across her chair. I walked to Sarah's nightstand and opened the drawer. Some sign that I wasn't crazy, that the distance I'd been feeling was real and not just my imagination. I found her journal. I'd never read it before. Sarah had kept journals since college, leather-bound books she filled with her thoughts and feelings and observations. She'd told me once that they were private, that everyone needed a space that was entirely their own. I'd respected that. Had never even been tempted to look. I was tempted now. I pulled it out, held it in my hands. It was heavy, expensive. The kind of journal you bought when you took yourself seriously, as a writer, as a thinker, as someone whose inner life mattered enough to document. I opened it to the most recent entry. Dated 3 days ago, the night before we left for Cape May. I don't know how much longer I can do this. Dave is suffocating me. Every day feels like being slowly crushed by expectations I never agreed to. He wants this version of me that doesn't exist, the grateful wife, the appreciative partner. God knows I tried. But I'm so tired of pretending. This trip might be good. Marcus will be there. And maybe spending time with someone who actually sees me, who actually appreciates who I am, will help me figure out what I really want. I read it 3 times, each word sinking deeper into my chest, like stones dropped into deep water. There was more. Pages and pages of entries going back months. Marcus texted today. Just checking in, but it made me smile. Dave noticed and got all weird about it. I'm not doing anything wrong. Why do I feel guilty? Had coffee with Marcus this afternoon. Told Dave I was meeting Amy. He wouldn't understand. He gets jealous of everything. But talking to Marcus is the only time I feel like myself anymore. Dave tried to initiate sex tonight. I couldn't do it. I kept thinking about Marcus's hands, about how it would feel to be touched by someone who doesn't take me for granted. I feel terrible. Don't I deserve to feel wanted? I think I'm falling for Marcus. Or maybe I'm just falling out of love with Dave and Marcus is there, showing me what it could be like. Either way, something has to change. I closed the journal. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. This wasn't just a bad day at the beach. This wasn't just me being jealous or insecure. This was months of calculated deception. This was emotional infidelity, if not physical. This was my wife falling in love with another man while telling me I was crazy for noticing. I went downstairs, journal in hand, and sat on the couch. Our couch, where we'd watched movies and eaten takeout and made plans for the future. Where I'd proposed to her, actually a stupid, spontaneous moment one Sunday morning when she was reading and I was overcome with love and certainty. Had she ever loved me? Or had I just been convenient, stable, safe, the reliable option while she figured out what she really wanted? My phone buzzed. I'd forgotten to put it back in airplane mode. A text from James. Hey man, Sarah said you had a family emergency and had to leave. Hope everything's okay. Let us know if you need anything. A family emergency. That's what she'd told them. Not that she'd driven me away. Not that she'd humiliated me in public and told me to leave. A family emergency. Something that made me the problem while preserving her image as the caring wife dealing with a difficult situation. I almost laughed. It was such a perfect lie. So typical of how she operated, twisting reality. Just enough to make herself the victim or the hero. Never the villain. Another text came through, this time from Amy. Dave, I'm so sorry about your dad. Sarah mentioned he had a fall? Sending love. My dad, who was perfectly healthy, who I'd talked to 3 days ago about lawnmower repair. She'd created an entire fictional emergency to explain my absence, and our friends were buying it, sending sympathy, probably feeling sorry for Sarah having to deal with all this while on vacation. The rage came then. Not hot and explosive, but cold and crystalline. A clarity that cut through all the self-doubt and gaslighting and months of being told I was overreacting. I wasn't overreacting. I was underreacting. I'd been drowning quietly while everyone told me the water was fine. I took photos of every page in Sarah's journal, every entry about Marcus, every lie she'd documented, every moment of betrayal she'd recorded in her own handwriting. Then I put the journal back exactly where I'd found it, drawer slightly open the way she always left it. Then I went to my office, the spare bedroom I'd converted into a workspace, where I handled our finances and did my own work on weekends. I opened our joint banking account. Sarah had been spending money. Charges I hadn't noticed because I'd been trusting, because I'd believed her. When she said she was getting coffee with Amy, or having lunch with coworkers. But the credit card statement told a different story. 4 dinners at Marcel's, an expensive French restaurant downtown. A hotel room in Boulder. One night, 3 weeks ago, when Sarah had told me she was going to a yoga retreat with Christina. Gifts from Tiffany's. A men's watch. Purchased last month. When I'd asked about the charge, she'd said it was an early birthday present for her brother. Her brother's birthday was in January. It was June. Concert tickets. Wine tastings. A weekend trip to Aspen I'd known nothing about. Charged to our card, but taken without me. I downloaded every statement going back 6 months. I organized them by date and type of expense. I created a spreadsheet, because that's what I did when things felt out of control. I made spreadsheets. I organized data. I looked for patterns in the chaos. The pattern was clear. My wife was living a second life. With our money. While telling me I was paranoid. I spent the rest of Sunday documenting everything. Every text message I could recover from our shared cloud storage. Every location pin from her phone showing her somewhere she'd said she wasn't. Every lie lined up next to every piece of evidence that proved it false. I wasn't doing this out of revenge. Or maybe I was, but it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like survival. Like gathering ammunition for a war I hadn't realized I was fighting until I'd already lost most of the battles. My phone rang. Sarah. I didn't answer. She called 6 more times, texted, "We need to talk. You can't just ignore me forever. I'm coming home tomorrow. We need to figure this out. Dave, please. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said what I said. Let's just talk." I responded with a single message. "I'll be here." Then I went back to work. Sarah came home Monday evening. I heard her car in the driveway. Heard the front door open. Heard her calling my name with false brightness. Like nothing had happened. Like we were just resuming our normal life after a normal vacation. I was sitting at the kitchen table. My laptop open. My evidence organized in neat folders. Months of documentation. Hours of work. All leading to this moment. She walked into the kitchen and stopped when she saw me. "Hey," she said, her voice careful. "Where else would I be?" "I don't know. You left without telling anyone. You didn't answer your phone." "You." She stopped, started again. "I was worried about you." I didn't respond. I just looked at her. This woman I'd loved. This stranger wearing her face. "Dave, can we please talk about this? About what happened?" "Sure," I said. "Let's talk. Why don't you start by telling me about your family emergency?" She had the grace to look guilty. "You just disappeared. You could have told them the truth. That you humiliated me in public and told me to go home." I didn't. It wasn't like that. You're twisting it. Am I? I turned my laptop around so she could see the screen. Let's see. Here's a text from Amy, expressing sympathy about my dad's fall. Here's one from James asking if my father's doing okay. Here's one from your mom, who you apparently called to tell about this fictional emergency, asking if she should fly out to help. Sarah's face went white. I panicked. Everyone was asking questions, and I didn't know what to say. So you lied. You made up an emergency. You invented a crisis. Because that was easier than admitting you'd been treating me like shit all day. I wasn't treating you like you were being jealous and paranoid, was I? I opened another folder, pulled up the photos of her journal entries. Tell me, Sarah, when you wrote in your journal about falling for Marcus, about thinking of his hands while I tried to touch you, about lying to me so you could meet him for coffee, was I being paranoid then? Or was I noticing what you were desperately trying to hide? The color drained from her face completely. You read my journal? That's private. You had no right. 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 And you had no right to fuck around with Marcus while spending our money and gaslighting me into thinking I was crazy. My voice was still calm, still even. That scared her more than yelling would have. I haven't fucked anyone. I haven't cheated. Really? Is that the line you're going with? I pulled up the credit card statements. 4 dinners at Marcel's. Tuesdays. When I was at work. Always for 2. Always expensive wine. Always charged to our joint account. Want to tell me who you were having romantic French dinners with? Silence. Or how about the hotel room in Boulder? The weekend I thought you were at a yoga retreat. Should I call the hotel and ask if they have security footage? See if Marcus checked in with you? Dave. Or maybe we should talk about the Tiffany's purchase, the men's watch. I'm still wearing my 10-year-old Timex, so I know that wasn't for me. Who was it for? Sarah? She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. But I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just a hollow kind of vindication. It's not what you think, she said. Marcus and I, we connect. We talk. He understands me in ways you don't. But we haven't. We're not. You're not what? Sleeping together? Congratulations. You want a medal? You've only been emotionally cheating, lying, manipulating. I guess that makes you virtuous. It's not stealing. It's our money. It was our money when we agreed to be honest with each other, when we agreed to be faithful. The moment you started lying, the moment you started living a secret life, it stopped being our anything. She collapsed into a chair, her hands over her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was just unhappy. And Marcus was there. And he made me feel. Feel what? Desired? Special? Different than how I made you feel? 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 What they were Gover Day. I closed my laptop. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. I have documentation of every lie, every secret expense, every entry in your journal about your feelings for Marcus. I have texts you thought were deleted. I have location data. I have everything. Dave, please. I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm not going to blast this all over social media or tell everyone what you did. I'm just going to end our marriage as cleanly as possible. You can tell whatever story you want to our friends. I don't care anymore, but I love you, she sobbed. I know I made mistakes, but I do love you. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll cut off all contact with Marcus. I'll do whatever it takes. I stood up. You should have thought about that on the beach. When I asked you to consider my feelings, and you told me to go home. When you spent the entire day making sure everyone saw how little I mattered to you. when you chose to humiliate me in front of our friends rather than show me basic respect. It was one day. One stupid day. Are you really going to throw away our entire marriage over one day? It wasn't one day. It was months of you lying and cheating and making me feel crazy for noticing. It was 6 years of me trying to be good enough for you while you kept moving the goalpost. It was a marriage where I gave everything and you took everything and still wanted more. I walked toward the stairs, then stopped. You can stay here tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to a hotel until we figure out living arrangements. I'll be fair about the division of assets. I don't want to hurt you. I just want to be free of you. Dave. And Sarah? Next time you tell people about your family emergency, you might want to actually let my father know he's supposedly injured. He called me today, very confused about all the sympathy cards arriving at his house. I left her crying at the kitchen table and went upstairs to pack another bag. This time for real. This time for good. The next 3 months were a blur of lawyers and paperwork and negotiations over who got the couch and who got the coffee maker and who got to keep the friends. Sarah tried everything. Tears, anger, seduction, threats. She promised to change. She promised Marcus meant nothing. She promised we could start over, do better, be better. I didn't waver. Marcus, interestingly, disappeared from her life the moment the divorce papers were filed. I learned this from Amy, who'd taken my side in the split, one of the few who had. Apparently, Marcus wasn't interested in Sarah once she was actually available. Once pursuing her involved actual commitment rather than just the thrill of the forbidden. Sarah was devastated. Lost her marriage and her fantasy in the same week. The house sold quickly. We split the proceeds down the middle, despite my lawyer's arguments that I was entitled to more, given her financial infidelity. But I didn't want more. I wanted clean. I wanted done. Our friends mostly sided with Sarah. She'd gotten her story out first, painted me as the jealous husband who'd abandoned her on vacation, who'd destroyed a marriage over sunscreen and insecurity. Only a few people, Amy, Derek, and surprisingly James, had asked for my side. When I showed them the evidence, they were horrified. But they were also tired, and taking sides in a divorce is exhausting. And eventually even they drifted back into neutral territory. I moved into a small apartment downtown. 1 bedroom, minimal furniture, windows that looked out at the mountains I'd always loved. I threw myself into work. I got a promotion I probably didn't deserve but had finally started asking for. Started going to therapy, something I'd resisted for years but now recognized as essential. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, asked me once if I regretted leaving. No, I said. I regret not leaving sooner. Why didn't you? I thought about it. Because I kept thinking it was my fault. That if I could just be better, try harder, love her enough, it would work. I kept adjusting myself to fit into the shape she wanted, and it never occurred to me that the shape kept changing, that I was trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces didn't actually fit together. And now I know that love shouldn't feel like suffocation. That partnership shouldn't require you to disappear. That asking for basic respect isn't jealousy. It's sanity. Dr. Martinez nodded. What would you tell your past self, if you could? The version of you sitting on that beach? I'd tell him to trust his instincts, that the discomfort he's feeling isn't overreaction, it's information. That silence can be more powerful than rage. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a message from Sarah. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, and it's too late. But I'm sorry. You deserved better than what I gave you. I hope you're happy. I read it twice, then put my phone down. Across the restaurant, my date Emma, a photographer I'd met through work, was laughing at something the waiter said. She caught my eye and smiled. Easy and genuine. I picked up my phone and typed a response to Sarah. I am. 2 words. I deleted her number after that. Not out of anger, but out of closure. She was part of my past now. A chapter that had taught me what I didn't want, what I wouldn't accept again. Emma came back to the table, her eyes bright with some story she wanted to tell me. Sorry, she said. I got talking to the waiter about his camera setup. He does wedding photography on the side. But anyway, where were we? I think you were about to tell me about the shoot you did in Rocky Mountain National Park, I said. Right. Okay, so picture this. She launched into her story, animated and present, fully engaged with me, and the moment and the conversation. I listened, really listened, and realized something. This easy exchange, this mutual interest, this feeling of being seen and heard and valued. This was what I'd been missing, what I'd forgotten existed. Later that night, walking Emma to her car, she turned to me and asked, "Can I ask you something? And you can totally tell me it's none of my business." Sure. Your divorce. Do you ever regret it? I know it's recent, and I'm not trying to pry, but I've dated divorced guys before, and there's always this lingering attachment, this sense that part of them is still back there, still trying to figure out what went wrong. I thought about it, about Sarah and Marcus, and the beach, and the silence, and the moment I'd finally chosen myself. No, I said, I don't regret the divorce, but I do regret the time it took me to get there. All those months of accepting less than I deserved, of letting someone make me feel small, of convincing myself that love was supposed to hurt that much. I regret not walking away sooner. Emma nodded slowly. I get that. I stayed in a bad relationship way too long, too. There's something about hope that makes you stupid. Hope or fear? Both. Maybe. Hope that it'll get better. Fear that you're the problem. That you're asking for too much. That maybe this is as good as it gets. And then one day you wake up and realize this is not as good as it gets. And you either accept that or you don't. You either decide you're worth more, or you settle for a life that slowly kills you. We stood by her car, the Denver night cool around us, the mountains invisible in the darkness but present nonetheless solid, enduring, unchanged by human drama. So what made you finally leave? Emma asked. A beach day, I said. And the realization that I'd been gone for a long time, I just hadn't moved out yet. Emma reached out and squeezed my hand. Well, I'm glad you left. Me too, I said, and I meant it. A year after the divorce, I got an invitation to James and Christina's anniversary party. Sarah would be there. Marcus would probably be there. Most of our old friend group would be there. I almost declined, but Emma convinced me to go. You can't avoid every event forever, she said. And besides, I want to see what all these people look like. I want to see the woman who was dumb enough to let you go. So we went. The party was at James and Christina's house, a beautiful place in the foothills, all wood and glass and views. People were scattered across the deck and lawn, drinks in hand, laughter rising into the golden hour light. Sarah was there. I saw her immediately. You always see your ex immediately, like your body has some kind of radar for past pain. She was talking to Amy, looking thin and tired, her hair shorter than I remembered. She saw me, and something crossed her face, surprise, hurt, something else I couldn't identify. Marcus was not there. I found out later he'd moved to Seattle, chasing some startup opportunity. Emma and I made our way through the party, saying hello to people, making small talk. Some people were warm and welcoming. Others were awkward, unsure how to treat me now that the dust had settled and they'd realized their loyalty to Sarah had been misplaced. I was gracious to everyone. I'd learned that grace was its own form of power. Christina pulled me aside at one point, her eyes bright with wine and emotion. I'm so glad you came, she said, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not understanding what was happening. It's okay, I said. People believe what's easiest to believe. what confirms their existing view of the world. Still, I'm sorry, and I'm happy for you. Emma seems great. She is. Later, inevitably, Sarah approached me. Emma had gone inside to use the bathroom, and I was standing alone by the railing, looking out at the mountains, turning purple in the dusk. "Hi," Sarah said. "Hi." We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us like smoke. "She's pretty," Sarah said finally. "Emma. She seems nice." "She is. Are you happy?" I turned to look at her. Really, look at her. At the woman who'd once been my entire world, who'd once held the power to devastate me with a word or a look. "Yes," I said simply. "I am." Her eyes filled with tears. "I fucked up, didn't I? I had something real and I destroyed it, chasing something that didn't even exist. Marcus he was an escape, a fantasy, and I threw away reality for it." "Yeah," I said. "You did. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I'd made different choices? If I'd talked to you instead of turning to him? If I'd been honest?" "Sometimes, but not as much as you'd think." "Why not?" "Because you didn't make different choices. You made the ones you made. And those choices told me everything I needed to know about who you were, what you valued, how you saw me. I can't build a life on what-ifs. None of us can." Emma came back out then, sliding her arm through mine with easy affection. "Hey," she said to Sarah, friendly but not overly warm. "I'm Emma. Sarah. It's nice to meet you. You too. Dave's told me a lot about you." Sarah's eyebrows rose. "As he?" "Sure. You were a big part of his life. That doesn't just disappear." Sarah looked at me, something vulnerable in her expression. "Does he hate me?" Emma laughed, not cruelly, but genuinely. "Are you kidding? Dave doesn't hate anyone. He's like the most emotionally healthy person I've ever met, which is shocking, given how messy his divorce was." "I think that's my cue to change the subject," I said. "No, it's okay." Sarah wiped at her eyes. "I'm glad you're happy, Dave. I mean it. You deserve to be." "So do you," I said. And I meant it, because I'd learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and moving on doesn't mean holding grudges. It just means accepting that people are human, that they fuck up, that sometimes love isn't enough. Sarah drifted away after that, back to her corner of the party. I watched her go and felt nothing but a distant sadness, not for what we'd lost, but for what we'd never really had. "You okay?" Emma asked. "Yeah, actually, I'm great." She kissed my cheek. "Good. Because I was promised an anniversary cake, and I want to make sure you're emotionally stable enough to help me eat way too much of it." I laughed. "I think I can manage that." We went inside, into the warm light and friendly chaos of the party, into a life that was mine again, that felt authentic and true and worth living. 2 years after the divorce, on a beach very different from the one where everything fell apart, I asked Emma to marry me. She said yes, of course. We'd already been living together for 6 months. Already knew we wanted forever. Already understood that marriage was just making official what we'd been building all along. But I wanted to do it on a beach anyway. Wanted to reclaim that space. Rewrite that story. Wanted to prove to myself that beaches weren't cursed. That sand and sun and ocean weren't synonyms for betrayal and humiliation. This beach was in California, near Big Sur, where cliffs met water and the landscape felt ancient and indifferent to human drama. We'd been walking together, just the two of us, when I stopped and pulled the ring from my pocket. "I have something to ask you," I said. Emma turned, saw the ring, and started laughing and crying at the same time. "You're doing this here? Now? I'm covered in sand, and I haven't brushed my hair in like 3 days." "I don't care about your hair. That's good, because it's a disaster." "Emma." I took her hand. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build something real and honest and lasting. I want to wake up every day knowing that we chose each other, not out of fear or convenience or because we were settling, but because we genuinely make each other better. Will you marry me? She pulled me up and kissed me hard. The ring box crushed between us. Yes, she said against my lips. Yes, obviously yes. How is that even a question? I slid the ring onto her finger, and we stood there on the beach, the waves crashing behind us, the sun beginning its descent. Can I tell you something? Emma said after a moment. Anything. I'm glad you went through what you went through. Not because I want you to have been hurt, but because it made you who you are. It made you careful and intentional and aware. You don't take people for granted. You show up, and you make it clear that you're choosing this, choosing me. That's rare. That's precious. I'm glad too, I said, because it taught me that walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the bravest, most loving thing you can do for yourself, and eventually for everyone else too. We stayed on that beach until the sun set, until the sky turned orange and pink and purple, until the first stars appeared and the air grew cold. We talked about the wedding, about the future, and I realized I'd finally found my third marriage. Not to a new person after the second one ended, but to a new version of myself. The person who learned that silence can be powerful, that boundaries are necessary, that you can't love someone into treating you well, they have to choose it themselves. The first marriage to Sarah had taught me what I didn't want. The second marriage to myself, in that year of therapy and rebuilding, had taught me what I did want. And this third one, to Emma, was the reward for doing the work, for not settling, for believing I deserved more than crumbs. 5 years after the beach day that changed everything, I was giving a toast at Derek and Amy's wedding. They'd asked me to be their officiant, actually, but I declined. I had no business telling people how to stay married, when my own track record was checkered, but I'd agreed to say a few words at the reception. I stood in front of a room full of people, some of whom had been at that beach, some of whom knew the whole story, some of whom only knew me as Emma's husband, the guy who seemed to have his shit together. I'm not great at public speaking, I started, so I'm going to keep this short. Derek, Amy, you asked me to talk about love, about what makes a marriage work, and honestly, I spent a long time thinking I had no business answering that question. My first marriage failed. Publicly. In a way that left a lot of damage in its wake. But I've learned something in the years since then. I've learned that failure teaches you more than success ever could. That sometimes things have to fall completely apart before you can build something that actually lasts. So here's what I know about marriage, about love, about choosing another person every day. First, you have to be willing to walk away. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. You have to know that you could survive on your own, that you're not clinging to another person out of fear or desperation. Because only when you know you can leave do you truly understand that you're choosing to stay. Second, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't let anyone gaslight you into doubting your own experience, your own perception. Your feelings are information. Pay attention to them. Third, silence is powerful. You don't have to engage with every argument, respond to every provocation, defend every boundary. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop participating in dynamics that don't serve you. And finally, I looked at Emma, sitting at our table, smiling up at me. Marry someone who makes you better, not someone who needs you to fix them, not someone you have to perform for, but someone who sees you completely and loves you anyway, someone who shows up, someone who chooses you clearly and consistently in ways that leave no room for doubt. I raised my glass. To Derek and Amy, may your marriage be boring in all the right ways and exciting in all the best ways. May you never have to learn these lessons the hard way. And may you always remember that love isn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It's about showing up, day after day, in the small and ordinary moments that actually matter. Everyone drank. People clapped. I sat down, and Emma squeezed my hand under the table. That was perfect, she whispered. Was it too much? No, it was honest. That's all anyone really needs, honesty. Later, during the dancing, Sarah appeared. I hadn't known she was invited, hadn't seen her arrive, but there she was, standing at the edge of the dance floor, watching Emma and me sway to some slow song. When the song ended, she approached us. "Hi," she said. "I hope it's okay that I'm here." Amy insisted, and I wasn't sure, but I wanted to come. For her. "Of course it's okay," Emma said warmly. "It's good to see you." Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "For both of you, thank you. I'm getting married too, actually, next month. To someone I met at work. Someone stable and kind and nothing like Marcus." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "I've been in therapy. Working on my shit, as they say. Trying to figure out why I sabotage everything good in my life." "That's good," I said. "I'm glad you're working on it." "Are you?" "Glad? I mean?" "Yes. I'm not angry at you, Sarah. I haven't been for a long time. I'm angry at myself enough for both of us." She looked down at her hands. "I think about that day sometimes. The beach. The things I said to you. How cruel I was. How blind. And I wonder who that person was. The one who could treat someone she loved like that. We all have versions of ourselves we're not proud of," I said. "The question is whether we learn from them." "Have you learned from it?" "Yeah. I learned that I'm worth more than I thought I was. That I don't have to accept mistreatment to be loved. That walking away from the wrong thing is how you make room for the right thing." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I really did love you. You know, I just didn't know how to do it right. Didn't know how to be present for someone else when I couldn't even be present for myself." "I know," I said. Because hurt people, and Sarah had been hurting in ways I'd never fully understood, carrying wounds that predated our marriage, acting out patterns that had nothing to do with me. Understanding that didn't excuse what she'd done, but it helped explain it. An explanation, I'd learned, was a kind of closure all its own. Emma excused herself to get a drink, giving Sarah and me a moment alone. "You got lucky," Sarah said when Emma was gone. "Finding someone like her, someone who fits. It's not luck. I chose differently. I knew what to look for because I knew what to avoid. Meaning me, meaning the dynamics we created together. The ways we brought out the worst in each other. It wasn't all you, Sarah. I enabled a lot of it. I accepted things I shouldn't have. I made myself small to make you comfortable. We were both responsible for what that marriage became." She nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. For the beach, for Marcus, for lying, for making you feel crazy when you were just paying attention. You deserved so much better than what I gave you." "Thank you," I said. She smiled sadly, but genuinely. "I should go. Let you get back to your wife. But Dave, I hope you know that leaving me, walking away that night, it was the best thing you could have done. For you, but also for me, because it forced me to look at myself, to see what I'd become. I hated you for it for a while. I'm glad something good came from it. More than something. Everything. You taught me that there are consequences to how we treat people. That love isn't unconditional. Shouldn't be unconditional. That sometimes the most loving thing someone can do is refuse to accept your bullshit." She walked away then, disappearing back into the crowd. I watched her go and felt nothing but a distant warmth. The kind of feeling you have for someone who was important once, who taught you lessons you needed to learn, who exists now only as a story you tell about who you used to be. Emma came back, handed me a beer. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm good." What did she want? To apologize, to tell me she's getting married, to make peace, I think. And did she make peace? I thought about it. About the journey from that beach to this moment. About the silent rage that had turned into documentation, the documentation that had turned into divorce, the divorce that had turned into freedom, and the freedom that had turned into this. A life I'd built intentionally, carefully, with full awareness of what I wanted and what I wouldn't tolerate. "Yeah," I said. "I think we both did." Emma leaned into me, and we stood there watching other people dance, watching other couples navigate their own journeys, their own dramas, their own versions of love and loss and redemption. "Can I tell you something?" Emma said. "Always. When we have kids, and I know we've talked about this, but when we actually do, I want to teach them about boundaries, about self-worth, about how love should feel. I don't want them to ever accept what you accepted. I don't want them to think that staying is always noble, that suffering is the same as commitment." "Me too," I said. "I want them to know that walking away from the wrong thing isn't failure, it's courage. And that silence can be more powerful than screaming, and that sometimes the best revenge is just living well." She smiled up at me. "Look at us, already planning our children's emotional education. We're going to be insufferable parents, the absolute worst. The kind who make other parents feel bad about their emotional intelligence. I can't wait." We danced then. There in the middle of Derek and Amy's wedding, surrounded by people who knew pieces of our story but not all of it, people who saw us as a couple but didn't know about the journey it took to get here. And I thought about that beach day, about the moment I'd decided I was done, the moment I'd booked that flight, the moment I'd walked out of the hotel room and into an uncertain future. I thought about how terrifying it had been, how much it had hurt, how lost I'd felt in those early days, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake, if I'd thrown away something that could have been salvaged. And I thought about how wrong I'd been to doubt myself, how right it had been to trust my instincts, to honor my pain, to refuse to accept a love that required me to disappear. The song changed. Someone called Emma's name, her sister, wanting to take a photo. Emma kissed my cheek and went to pose, laughing and beautiful and fully present in her own life. I stood alone for a moment, beer in hand, surrounded by celebration. And I realized I'd won. Not in the way Sarah thought, not in some competitive sense where I'd gotten revenge or proved something, but in the way that mattered most. I'd reclaimed myself. I'd learned what I was worth. I'd built a life that felt authentic and true, with a person who saw me clearly and chose me anyway. The beach had been the beginning. The silence had been the weapon. Not loud or explosive or dramatic, just quiet, elegant, real, the way the best revenge always is. If you've ever felt like you're slowly disappearing in a relationship, like your feelings don't matter, like you're being told you're crazy for noticing what's right in front of your face, I want you to know something. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You're not too sensitive or too jealous or too demanding. You're paying attention. And sometimes, paying attention is the most radical act of self-love you can commit. I learned this on a beach in Cape May, on a day that should have been about vacation and sunshine and connection. Instead, it became about silence and departure, and the realization that I'd been fighting to save something that was already gone. Here's what I wish someone had told me earlier. Your discomfort is information. When you're always the one apologizing or adjusting or trying to be less, that's not you being difficult. That's your instincts telling you that the equation doesn't balance. Silence is more powerful than screaming. The world tells us that strong emotions require loud expression. But sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stop engaging. Stop defending. Stop trying to make someone see your worth. Just walk away quietly, with dignity intact. Evidence matters, but not for the reason you think. I documented everything. Sarah's journal, the credit card statements, The lies stacked on top of lies. Not to destroy her, but to protect myself from my own doubt. When someone is gaslighting you, when you're being told your reality isn't real, evidence is your anchor. It's the thing that keeps you from floating away into their version of events. You can't love someone into treating you well. But if someone has decided you're not worth basic consideration, if they've chosen someone else in their heart even while staying in your bed, there's nothing you can do. You can only choose yourself. Walking away isn't giving up. It's the opposite. It's refusing to give up on the possibility of something better. It's saying, I deserve more than this, even if I don't know yet what more looks like. People ask me sometimes if I regret how I handled things. If I wish I'd fought harder, made a scene, confronted Sarah on the beach instead of leaving quietly. And I always say, no. It was the clearest way I had of saying, this isn't worth my words anymore. This isn't worth my energy. You've already made your choice, and now I'm making mine. The truth is that revenge fantasies are tempting. We want dramatic confrontations, public exposures, moments where everyone finally sees what we saw all along. We want validation, vindication, witnesses to our pain. But the best revenge, the kind that actually heals you, that actually moves you forward, isn't about them at all. It's about you. It's about building a life so authentic, so full, so aligned with your values that the past becomes just a story you tell, a lesson you learned, a chapter you closed. Emma and I have been married for 3 years now. We have a daughter, Maya, who just turned 1, who knows nothing yet about betrayal or divorce or the complicated ways adults hurt each other. Sometimes I watch her sleep and think about what I'll tell her someday, about love and self-worth and knowing when to stay and when to go. I think I'll tell her this. Love should feel like coming home, not like disappearing. And if someone ever makes you feel small, invisible, crazy for having needs, believe yourself first. Trust your instincts. Know that walking away from the wrong thing is how you make room for the right thing. And remember, silence is powerful. Evidence is truth. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and even for the other person is simply refuse to participate in a dynamic that's slowly killing you both. I think about Sarah sometimes, about whether she ever found what she was looking for, whether therapy helped. I hope so. I genuinely hope she's happy, that she's learned how to be present, that she's treating her current partner better than she treated me. But mostly, I don't think about her at all, because my life is full of things that actually matter. Emma's laugh, Maya's first words, the novel I'm slowly writing, the friendships I've rebuilt, the version of myself I'm becoming. The beach didn't break me. It freed me. And that night, when I booked that flight and packed my bag and walked out into an uncertain future, that wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. So if you're reading this and you're still on that beach, still sitting there watching someone disrespect you while everyone else pretends not to notice, I want you to know, it's okay to leave. It's okay to book the flight. It's okay to pack your bag and walk away and let them wonder where you went. You don't owe anyone your suffering. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't owe anyone a dramatic scene or a perfectly articulated goodbye. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Sometimes silence speaks volumes. Sometimes justice is just living well.